The wedding dress hung in tatters around her shoulders, the ivory silk streaked with dust and tears. When Delilah Gardner stumbled into San Diego's only saloon on a scorching afternoon in July of 1878, and every man in the place went silent as death. She looked like a ghost or maybe an angel who had fallen from heaven and hit every rock on the way down. The lace veil dragged behind her like a shroud, and her dark hair tumbled loose from what had once been an elaborate arrangement of pins and flowers. Her face was pale as moonlight except for the angry red mark that bloomed across her left cheek, and her green eyes stared straight ahead as if she saw nothing at all. The bartender, a grizzled man named Pete, froze with a glass halfway to the shelf. 3 ranch hands playing cards forgot their game. Even old Miguel, who usually slept through anything short of gunfire, opened his eyes and crossed himself. Then the door swung open again, and Austin Hayes walked in from the bright California sunshine, his spurs jangling soft against the worn floorboards. He was a tall man, lean and weathered from years working cattle, with brown hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of good whiskey. He had come to town for supplies, nothing more, but he stopped cold when he saw the woman in white standing there like she might shatter into 1,000 pieces if anyone spoke too loud. "Miss," he said quietly, removing his hat, "you look like you could use some water." She turned those empty green eyes toward him, and for a moment he thought she might not answer at all. Then her lips moved, barely a whisper. "He left me at the altar." The words hung in the air like smoke. Austin felt something twist in his chest, a mixture of anger at whoever had done this and something else he could not quite name. He stepped closer, slow and careful, the way he would approach a wounded horse. "Pete, get her some water and something to eat," Austin said without taking his eyes off the woman. "Miss, why do not you sit down before you fall down?" She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw the exact moment something broke through that fog of shock. Her face crumpled and she swayed on her feet. Austin moved fast, catching her before she could fall, and was startled by how light she felt in his arms, all silk and bones and trembling. He carried her to a table in the corner, away from the stairs, and settled her gently into a chair. Pete brought water and some bread and cheese, and Austin pulled up another chair, sitting close enough that he could catch her again if she needed it but far enough to give her space. "Drink some water," he said, pushing the glass toward her. "When is the last time you ate?" She stared at the water like she had forgotten what it was for. Then she picked up the glass with shaking hands and took a sip, then another, then drained the whole thing. Austin nodded to Pete for more. "Breakfast yesterday," she said, her voice rough. "The wedding was supposed to be at 2 o'clock today. I waited in that church for 3 hours. She laughed, but it was a broken sound. "My father told me Richard loved me, said he was a good man, a successful businessman from Los Angeles. I believed him. I believed everything." Austin felt his jaw tighten. "Your father arranged the marriage." "My father sold me," she corrected, and her hands closed into fists on the table. "Richard Thornton paid him $5,000 for a bride. I only found that out this morning when I heard them arguing. Richard wanted half his money back, said I was not worth the full price because I read too much and had too many opinions." The tears started then, sliding down her cheeks. "My father agreed. They were haggling over my value like I was a horse when Richard just decided it was not worth any price at all. He left. My father took the money anyway and said I had shamed him." The fury that rose in Austin was sharp and clean. He had seen a lot of unfairness in his 32 years, had watched good people get trampled by bad luck and worse men, but this felt personal somehow. This woman sitting before him in her ruined wedding dress, crying quiet tears while the whole saloon pretended not to listen, deserved better than what she had been given. "Where is your father now?" he asked, keeping his voice level. "Gone. He left on the noon stage with Richard's money in his pocket." She wiped at her face with the back of her hand, smearing the tears. "I have nowhere to go, no money, no family, I have nothing." Austin sat back in his chair and studied her. She was young, probably not yet 25, and despite everything, there was something unbroken in her eyes, some core of steel that had not bent yet. He made a decision then, quick and sure the way he made all his important choices. "I have a ranch about 10 miles north of here," he said. "Nothing fancy, just cattle and horses and a house that needs work. My housekeeper quit last month to go live with her daughter in San Francisco, and I have been making a mess of things on my own." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I could use help with the cooking and cleaning, and you need a place to stay. I will pay you fair wages, and you will have your own room. No expectations beyond the work. Just a job until you figure out what comes next." She stared at him like he had spoken in a foreign language. "You do not know me. I could be anyone." "You are someone who got dealt a bad hand and is still sitting upright," Austin said. "That tells me enough, but if you would rather I help you some other way, I will do that instead. Can buy you a ticket to anywhere the stage runs, if you have somewhere you want to go." Delilah looked down at her ruined dress, at her empty hands, and he saw her throat work as she swallowed. When she looked up again, there was something fierce in her expression. "I do not want charity." "Good, because I am not offering it. I am offering a job." He held out his hand. "Austin Hayes. I run cattle and break horses, and I make terrible coffee." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. She took his hand and her grip was surprisingly firm. "Delilah Gardner. I can cook, clean, mend clothes, keep books, and apparently I read too much." "Reading is not a flaw where I come from," Austin said. "Do we have a deal?" She held his hand for a moment longer, and he felt the trembling in her fingers. Then she nodded once, decisive. "We have a deal." Austin stood and offered her his arm. "My wagon is at the Mercantile. We should get you some proper clothes before we head out. That dress is not going to work for ranch life." She looked down at the silk and lace, and something hard crossed her face. "I never want to see this dress again." "Then we will find you something else." They walked out of the saloon together, and Austin felt every eye in the place following them. Let them talk. San Diego was a small town, and gossip spread faster than wildfire, but Austin had never cared much what people thought. He lived his life according to his own code, and that code said you helped people when they needed it. The Mercantile was run by a widow named Mrs. Chen, who had come to California during the gold rush and stayed after her husband died. She took one look at Delilah and whisked her into the back room without a word. Austin waited, studying bags of flour and coils of rope, until they emerged 20 minutes later. Delilah wore a simple blue cotton dress, practical boots, and a straw hat to keep off the sun. Her hair was braided down her back, and the wedding dress was wrapped in brown paper under her arm. She looked younger somehow, more real, though her eyes still carried that bruised look. "Burn it," she told Austin, handing him the package. "Please." He took it without argument. "Mrs. Chen gave him a long look, but said nothing as he paid for the clothes and added some supplies he had been meaning to pick up anyway. When they walked out to his wagon, Delilah stopped and stared at the horses. "I have never been on a ranch before," she said quietly. "I do not know if I will be any good at this." Austin loaded the supplies into the wagon bed, then tossed the wrapped wedding dress on top. "Everyone is bad at things until they learn how to do them. You will figure it out." He climbed up to the driver's seat and offered her his hand. "Come on. We have about 2 hours of daylight left, and I want to get home before dark." She took his hand and let him help her up. As they rolled out of town, she sat straight-backed on the seat beside him, her hands folded in her lap, and stared at the landscape rolling past. The land here was brown and gold, dotted with scrub brush and the occasional stand of trees. The air smelled like dust and sage and the distant promise of the ocean. "Tell me about your ranch," she said after a while. Austin kept his eyes on the road, guiding the horses around a particularly rough patch. "I have had it for 7 years now. Started with nothing but the land and a lot of debt. Built the house myself, added the barn 3 years ago. I run about 200 head of cattle and breed horses on the side. It is hard work, but it is mine. Do you have help? Other ranch hands? Got 2 men who work for me. Miguel comes by most days to help with the cattle, though he was the fellow sleeping in the saloon today. And Tommy Alvarez, he is young but a good worker, handles the horses mostly. They both have their own places but come by when I need them. Otherwise it is just me. And now me," she said softly, "and now you." They rode in silence for a while. The sun was getting lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink when Delilah spoke again. "Why did you help me? You could have just walked past." Austin thought about that. He had asked himself the same question as they left town, and the answer was not simple. "My mother died when I was 12, he said finally. "My father was a hard man, got harder after she was gone. When I was 18, he tried to force my sister into a marriage she did not want. Fellow was 40 years old and mean as a snake. I helped her run away instead. She made it to Boston, married a school teacher, has 3 kids now. We still write letters." He glanced at Delilah. "I guess when I saw you in that dress, looking like your whole world had ended, I thought about Sarah. Thought about what it would have meant if someone had helped her when she needed it. What did your father do when he found out you helped her leave? Disowned me. Told me I was not his son anymore and kicked me off his land. That was 14 years ago. Have not seen him since, and I do not regret it." He shifted the reins to one hand. "Point is, sometimes you have to break with what is expected to do what is right. You got dealt a bad hand today, Delilah, but that does not mean the whole game is over." She was quiet for a long time, and when he glanced over, he saw tears on her cheeks again, but she was not sobbing, just letting them fall. "Thank you," she whispered. "I know I already said it, but thank you. You do not need to keep thanking me. We made a deal and I keep my word." The ranch came into view as the last light was fading from the sky. It was not much to look at, just a sturdy wooden house with a covered porch, a big barn, and several corrals. But Austin felt the same pride he always did when he saw it, the satisfaction of having built something with his own hands. He helped Delilah down from the wagon and led her inside. The house was dim and smelled like coffee and leather. He lit a few lamps and warm light filled the front room. It was a simple space, furnished with things he had made or bought secondhand, but it was clean and solid. "Your room is back here," he said, leading her down a short hallway. He opened a door to a small bedroom with a narrow bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out toward the mountains. "It is not much, but the bed is comfortable and you will have privacy. My room is on the other side of the house." Delilah stepped inside and looked around. She ran her hand over the quilt on the bed, a pattern of stars in blue and white. "It is perfect," she said, and sounded like she meant it. "Washroom is down the hall. I will show you everything else in the morning." Austin paused in the doorway. "You have been through a lot today. Get some rest. Tomorrow we can talk about what your work will look like." But she turned to face him, and her expression was determined. "I want to start now. I want to do something useful, please." He understood that need, the desire to prove worth after being told you had none. "All right, kitchen is through there. If you are up for it, I would not say no to a decent meal." I have been living on burned beans and stale bread for 3 weeks. That ghost of a smile appeared again. I can do better than that. They walked back to the kitchen together, and Austin showed her where everything was kept. It was clear the space had been neglected. Dishes were piled in the sink, and the stove needed cleaning, but Delilah rolled up her sleeves without complaint. Within minutes, she had water heating and was sorting through his meager supplies. "You have almost nothing here," she said, but there was no judgment in her voice, just observation. "I can make do for tonight, but we will need real supplies if you want proper meals. Make a list. We will go into town later this week." He left her to it and went out to tend the horses and check on the cattle. By the time he came back inside an hour later, the kitchen smelled like heaven. Delilah had somehow created a meal of fried potatoes, eggs, and biscuits from his pathetic stores, and she had cleaned while she cooked. The dishes were washed, the stove gleamed, and she had even swept the floor. They ate at the small kitchen table, and Austin tried not to make it obvious how good the food tasted after weeks of his own cooking. Delilah ate quietly, methodically, and he noticed she was still pale, still had that haunted look in her eyes, but some of the shaking had stopped. "This is the best meal I have had in months," he said honestly. "It is just eggs and potatoes, still the best." She looked at him across the table, and something in her expression shifted. "You are not what I expected when I walked into that saloon today. What did you expect?" "I do not know, but not kindness, not decency." She set down her fork. "Most men would have looked at a woman in my situation and seen an opportunity to take advantage. I am not most men. I can see that." They finished eating in comfortable silence, and then Delilah insisted on cleaning up despite Austin's protests. He watched her move around the kitchen with efficient grace, putting things in order, and thought about how much the house already felt different with her in it. When she was done, she turned to him, drying her hands on a towel. "I should go to bed. Tomorrow I want to see everything, learn the routine. I want to earn my place here." "You already have," Austin said, "but we will start fresh in the morning. Sleep well, Delilah." "Good night, Austin." He watched her disappear down the hallway, heard the soft click of her door closing, and sat alone in his kitchen for a long time after that. He thought about the look on her face when she told him about being sold by her father, about the way her hands had shaken, about the strength it must have taken to walk into that saloon instead of just disappearing into nothing. He thought about the way she said his name. Then he shook his head at himself, banked the fire, and went to his own room. It had been a strange day, one that had started normal and ended with a broken bride in his house. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing for certain. He would do everything in his power to help Delilah Gardner put the pieces of herself back together. Morning came early on the ranch. Austin was up with the sun as always, pulling on his work clothes and heading to the kitchen to make coffee. But when he got there, he found Delilah already up, dressed in her new blue dress with an apron tied around her waist, and the smell of coffee already filling the room. "You are up early," he said. She turned from the stove, and he noticed the dark circles under her eyes. "I could not sleep much. Thought I might as well be useful." He wanted to tell her she did not have to prove anything, that one good night's rest would have been fine, but he recognized the stubborn set of her jaw. She needed this. "Coffee smells good. It should. I actually measured it properly instead of just dumping grounds in the pot." She poured him a cup and handed it to him. "There is bacon and corn cakes if you are hungry." They ate together as the sun rose higher, painting the world outside in gold and amber. Then Austin stood and held out his hand. "Come on. Time for the grand tour." He showed her everything. The barn where he kept the horses, letting her pet the gentle mare named Rosie who nuzzled at her palm. The chicken coop where a dozen hens scratched and clucked, and Delilah laughed for the first time when an especially bold rooster tried to peck at Austin's boot. The vegetable garden that had gone to weeds in recent weeks, which she eyed with obvious interest. The pastures where the cattle grazed, lazy in the morning heat. "It is a lot of work for one person," she observed. "It is a lot of work for 3 people," Austin corrected. "But we manage." "What do you need me to focus on, besides the cooking and cleaning?" He thought about that. "The garden needs help. The chicken coop could use a good cleaning. And honestly, the whole house could use a woman's touch. It has been just me and a rotating door of housekeepers who never stayed long, and it shows." "Why did they not stay?" Austin shrugged. "Too isolated, too much work, too boring. Take your pick. Mrs. Henderson left because she said I was married to this ranch and it was not natural for a man my age to be alone." He smiled wryly. "She kept trying to set me up with her niece." "Why did not you let her?" The question surprised him. He looked at Delilah, at her serious green eyes waiting for an answer. "Because I have been married once before, and it did not take. My wife Elizabeth died of fever 5 years ago. We had only been married 2 years, and they were not easy ones. She hated the ranch, hated the isolation, wanted to move to San Francisco. We fought about it constantly." He looked out at the land he loved. "When she died, I felt guilty that part of me was relieved she was not unhappy anymore, have not had much interest in trying again." "I am sorry," Delilah said softly. "That must have been hard. Life is hard. You just keep moving forward." He turned back to her. "What about you? Was this Richard fellow your first almost marriage?" She shook her head. "There was a boy when I was 17. William. We were in love, or I thought we were. My father said he was not good enough, not wealthy enough. He made William's family move away. I cried for months." She picked at a splinter on the fence rail. "Then there was no one until Richard. My father kept me close, said he was waiting for the right opportunity. I just did not realize the opportunity was for him, not me." "Where is your mother in all this?" "Dead. She died when I was born. My father never let me forget that I cost him the only woman he ever loved." The bitterness in her voice was sharp as broken glass. "He raised me to be obedient, to be quiet, to be what he needed me to be, and then he sold me." Austin felt that anger rise again, hot and fierce. "You are better off without him. I know, I just wish it did not hurt so much." They stood there in the morning sun. 2 broken people finding themselves in the aftermath of their respective storms, and something passed between them that Austin could not quite name. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. The sense that they both knew what it meant to lose something and keep going anyway. Over the following days, they fell into a rhythm. Austin worked the ranch, waking before dawn to tend the animals, mend fences, and break horses. Delilah transformed the house, cleaning and organizing with a ferocity that spoke to her need to control something in her life. She attacked the garden with the same energy, pulling weeds and coaxing the neglected plants back to life. In the evenings, they ate together and talked. Austin told her stories about his sister in Boston, about funny things that had happened with the cattle, about the time he accidentally bought a horse that turned out to be terrified of chickens. Delilah talked about the books she had read, about how she used to sneak them from her father's library, about the dreams she had when she was young of traveling and seeing the world beyond her father's house. "I wanted to go to San Francisco," she said one night as they sat on the porch watching the stars come out. "I wanted to work in a bookshop or maybe learn to be a teacher. My father said women who wanted careers were unnatural." "Your father was wrong about a lot of things," Austin said. "I know that now." A week passed, then 2. Miguel and Tommy both met Delilah and treated her with the kind of respect that came from working for a man they trusted. If they thought it was strange that Austin had taken in a woman, they said nothing, just tipped their hats and went about their work. Delilah proved to be a fast learner and a tireless worker. The house had never looked better. The garden was producing vegetables again. She had even taken over the books, recording expenses and income with neat, careful script that was far better than Austin's scrawl. But at night, Austin could hear her crying sometimes, soft sounds that came through the walls. He never mentioned it, just left a lamp burning in the kitchen in case she needed light, and made sure there was always coffee ready in the morning. She was healing, but healing took time. One afternoon in early August, Austin was working with a young stallion in the corral, trying to get the animal used to a saddle, when he heard a wagon approaching. He looked up to see a fancy rig pulling up to the house, and his gut tightened when he recognized the man driving it. Richard Thornton. Austin tied off the stallion and walked toward the house, his hand instinctively checking that his gun was on his hip. Delilah had come out onto the porch, and her face had gone white as she stared at the man climbing down from the wagon. Richard was a soft-looking man in expensive clothes, with carefully pomaded hair and a thick mustache. He looked out of place on the dusty ranch, like a peacock in a hen house. "Delilah," he called out as if they were old friends, "I have been looking everywhere for you." Austin stepped between them, his body language making it clear he was not going to let Richard near her. "I think the lady does not want to talk to you." Richard's eyes narrowed. "And who are you?" "I am the man who owns this ranch, which means you are trespassing. So say what you came to say and get out." Richard looked past Austin to Delilah. "I made a mistake. I should not have left. Your father and I have come to an agreement, and I am prepared to honor our arrangement. We can be married next week." Delilah's voice was steady when she spoke, though Austin could hear the tremor underneath. "No." "What do you mean, no? Your father accepted my money. We have a contract." "A contract he signed, not me. I am not property to be bought and sold." She stepped forward, and Austin was proud of the way she held herself, straight and strong. "You left me standing in that church for 3 hours, Richard. You told my father I was not worth what he was asking, and even if you had not, even if everything had gone perfectly, I would still say no. Because I do not want to marry you. I never did." Richard's face reddened. "You are being hysterical. Women always get emotional and do not know what is good for them." "Time for you to leave," Austin said quietly, and there was something in his voice that made Richard take a step back. "This is not over. I paid for a bride, and I intend to get what I paid for. If you come back here, I will not be so polite about asking you to leave," Austin said. His hand rested on his gun, not threatening, just present. Delilah made her choice clear: respect it and go. Richard looked between them, his face twisting with anger and something that might have been humiliation. "You will regret this," he said to Delilah. "Both of you." He climbed back into his wagon and drove away, the wheels kicking up dust. Austin watched until he was out of sight, then turned to Delilah. She was shaking, her arms wrapped around herself. "You all right?" he asked. "I thought I would feel scared when I saw him again. I thought I would fall apart." She looked at Austin with wonder in her eyes. "But I just felt angry." "I felt strong. You are strong. You have been strong this whole time. Because you helped me remember how to be." She reached out and touched his arm, just a brief contact, but it sent warmth through him. "Thank you for standing with me." "Always," he said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. But as they walked back to the house together, Austin could not shake the feeling that Richard's visit was not the end of something. It felt like the beginning. He was right. 3 days later, Delilah's father showed up. Gerald Gardner was a tall man with iron-gray hair and a face like a judge pronouncing sentence. He rode up in a hired carriage, and Austin had never seen someone look so out of place on a working ranch. The man's suit probably cost more than Austin made in 6 months. Austin was mending a fence line when he saw the carriage approach. He felt his jaw tighten as he recognized the passenger. He had hoped they had seen the last of Delilah's family, but apparently hope was not enough. He met Gerald in the yard, blocking the path to the house. "This is private property. You need an invitation to be here." Gerald looked down his nose at Austin with barely concealed contempt. "I am here to retrieve my daughter. I understand she has been working for you. I will compensate you for your trouble and be on my way." "Delilah is not your property to retrieve. She is a grown woman who makes her own choices. She is my daughter, and she will do as I say." Gerald's voice was cold and certain. "The marriage to Richard Thornton will proceed as planned. I have already spent his money, and I will not have my reputation damaged by her childish behavior." Before Austin could respond, Delilah's voice rang out from the porch. "You do not get to make that choice for me anymore." She walked toward them, and Austin saw that she was wearing one of her work dresses, her hair in a simple braid, her hands stained from the garden. She looked nothing like the broken bride who had stumbled into the saloon a month ago. She looked like herself. "Delilah, get your things. We are leaving." Gerald's tone allowed for no argument. "No." The word hung in the air like a gunshot. Gerald's face went red. "Excuse me," I said. "No, I am not leaving. I am not marrying Richard. I am not your property, and I am not for sale." Delilah's voice was steady, stronger than Austin had ever heard it. "You do not get to control my life anymore. I am your father. You owe me obedience." "I owe you nothing. You sold me like a horse at auction. You took another man's money and did not even have the decency to tell me the truth. You let me stand in that church thinking I was going to start a new life when all I was doing was being transferred from one owner to another." Delilah's eyes blazed. "I am done being owned." Gerald turned to Austin. What have you done to turn her against me? What lies have you filled her head with?" "No lies. Just gave her a place to stay and treated her with respect. Maybe if you had tried that, she would not be choosing to stay here instead of going with you." "This is not over," Gerald said, his voice shaking with fury. "I will go to the law. You cannot just steal another man's daughter. She is not stolen. She is safe. There is a difference." Austin crossed his arms. "And I would not try taking this to any law. Selling your daughter into marriage is not exactly going to make you look good to a judge." Gerald looked at Delilah one more time. "You will regret this. You are nothing without me. No money, no name, no prospects. You will end up in the gutter where you belong." "I would rather live in a gutter than spend another day under your roof," Delilah said, and her voice did not waver. Gerald climbed back into the carriage, slamming the door hard enough to make the horses startle. As he drove away, he did not look back once. Delilah stood in the yard, watching him disappear, and Austin saw her shoulders start to shake. He moved closer, ready to catch her if she fell, but when she turned to him, she was not crying. She was laughing. "I did it," she said, wonder in her voice. "I actually did it. I stood up to him." "You did more than that. You chose yourself. That takes more courage than most people ever find." She looked up at him, and there was something new in her eyes, something soft and searching. "I could not have done it without you, without this place. You gave me somewhere safe to figure out who I was without him. You were always that person. You just needed time to remember." They stood close together in the afternoon sun, and Austin felt something shift between them. It had been building for weeks, this thing neither of them had named, this connection that went deeper than employer and employee, deeper than friends. It was in the way she smiled at him over breakfast, the way he found excuses to work closer to the house, the way they talked late into the evening, neither wanting to say goodnight. "Austin," she said softly, "I think I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I am not broken anymore. Or maybe I am still broken, but I am healing." And part of that healing is realizing that I do not want to be afraid anymore. I do not want to let what my father did, or what Richard did, define the rest of my life. She took a breath. I like it here. I like the work, I like the ranch, I like the life. I like you. Austin's heart was beating faster than it had any right to. Delilah, I know I am just your housekeeper. I know we made a deal and I am not trying to change that if you do not want to. But I needed you to know. I needed to be honest. He reached out and took her hand, feeling the calluses she had earned from hard work, the strength in her fingers. You are not just anything. And I think I have been trying not to notice how much I look forward to seeing you every morning, or how much better this place feels with you in it, or how much I think about you when I should be thinking about cattle and horses. Really, really. He smiled, and it felt like the first real smile he had worn in years. I did not expect this when I offered you a job. I just wanted to help someone who needed it. But somewhere along the way, you became more than that. You became someone I care about, someone I think about, someone I want to be around. She stepped closer, and he could see the hope and fear warring in her expression. I am scared. I have never made my own choices before, never been allowed to want something just because I wanted it. What if I am wrong? What if this is just because you saved me and I am confusing gratitude with something else? Then we will figure that out together. No pressure, no expectations. We will just take it one day at a time and see where it goes. He squeezed her hand gently. But I do not think you are wrong. And I do not think I am either. I do not want to rush anything, she said. I need time to be sure of what I feel, to be sure that I am choosing this for the right reasons. We have all the time in the world. She smiled then, a real smile that lit up her whole face, and Austin felt something in his chest unlock. They stood there in the yard, holding hands like awkward teenagers, and it felt like the beginning of something good. Over the next few weeks, everything changed and nothing changed at all. Delilah still cooked and cleaned and tended the garden. Austin still worked the ranch from dawn to dusk. But now there were stolen glances and small touches. His hand on her back as he passed her in the kitchen. Her fingers brushing his when she handed him coffee. Long conversations on the porch that stretched until the stars came out. They went into San Diego together one Saturday for supplies, and Austin noticed the way people looked at them, the speculation in their eyes. Let them wonder. He walked beside Delilah with his head high, and when she smiled at something he said, he felt like the richest man in California. At the mercantile, Mrs. Chen gave them a knowing look as she wrapped their purchases. It is good to see you looking so well, Miss Gardner, and you too, Austin. You both seem happy. We are, Delilah said simply, and the truth of it was clear in her voice. They loaded the wagon and were heading back toward the ranch when they passed the church where the wedding was supposed to have taken place. Delilah stared at it for a long moment, then surprised Austin by asking him to stop. I want to go inside, she said. Are you sure? I need to face it. They walked into the empty church together, and the light streamed through the windows in colored shafts of gold and blue. Delilah stood in the center aisle, looking at the altar, and Austin stayed quiet beside her. I stood here in that dress, she said softly. I waited and waited, and everyone just stared at me. I felt so humiliated, so worthless. I thought my life was over. But it was not, Austin said. No. It was just beginning. She turned to him, and her eyes were bright. If Richard had not left, if my father had not sold me, if everything had not fallen apart, I would be living a life I never wanted with a man I did not love. I would have been miserable for years, maybe forever. Instead, I found this, I found you, I found myself. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best things, Austin said. I am not glad you got hurt, but I am grateful it brought you to me. She reached up and touched his face, a gentle touch that sent warmth through him. "So am I." He kissed her there in the empty church, soft and careful, and it felt like a promise. When they pulled apart, she was smiling. "Let us go home," she said. "Home." The word settled into Austin's heart like it belonged there. That night after dinner, they sat on the porch as usual, but this time Delilah sat closer, her shoulder touching his. The summer night was warm and full of cricket song, and the stars blazed overhead like scattered diamonds. "Tell me about your dreams," Austin said. "The real ones, not what your father wanted for you." Delilah was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I wanted to matter. I wanted to do something that meant something. My whole life I was just an ornament, something pretty to be displayed and then tucked away. I wanted to be useful, to be needed." "You are needed here, I know. And it is strange because I never thought I would want ranch life. I imagined cities and bookshops and crowds, but this—" She gestured at the night, at the land stretching dark around them. "This feels right. This feels like where I am supposed to be." "What about you?" she asked. "What are your dreams?" Austin thought about that. "I wanted to build something that lasted. My father's ranch was built on anger and control. People worked for him because they had to, not because they wanted to. I wanted something different. A place where people felt safe, where the work was hard but fair, where there was respect." He paused. "And I wanted someone to share it with. Elizabeth never wanted this life. I tried to make it work, but you cannot force someone to love what you love. I thought maybe I was meant to do this alone. And now I think maybe I was just waiting for the right person." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat like that for a long time, comfortable in the silence and in each other. September came, bringing cooler nights and the promise of fall. The ranch was thriving. The cattle were healthy, the horses were bringing good prices, and the garden was producing more than they could eat. Delilah had taken to preserving vegetables, lining up jars in the pantry with the same satisfaction Austin felt when he saw his growing herd. Miguel and Tommy had both warmed to Delilah completely. Miguel especially seemed to have adopted her as a kind of honorary daughter, teaching her Spanish words and telling her stories about his family. Tommy, who was shy and barely 20, treated her with careful respect and obvious admiration. "You have won them over completely," Austin told her one evening. "They are good men. You chose well." "I try to surround myself with good people." She smiled at that. "Is that what I am? Good people, you are the best people," he said, and kissed her. The kissing had become more frequent, more natural. Quick kisses in the kitchen when no one was around, longer ones on the porch at night. Each one felt like learning a new language, learning the shape and taste of each other, but they still moved carefully. Delilah still had her own room, and Austin never pushed for more. They were building something, and both of them understood that foundations needed to be solid. One afternoon in late September, Austin came in from working the cattle to find Delilah sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread in front of her. She had ink on her fingers and a determined expression on her face. "What are you working on?" he asked. "I have been going through the books, really looking at the numbers. Austin, you are underselling your horses. I have been reading about what breeding stock goes for in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and you could be getting twice what you are asking." He sat down across from her, intrigued. "Why do you think I am underselling?" "Because you are too honest. You tell buyers exactly what is wrong with the horses, all their quirks and flaws. You need to focus on what is right with them, and you need to market better. If we could get word to the right buyers, the ones who know quality, you could expand the breeding operation." Austin studied the papers, seeing the neat columns of figures, the notes she had made. "You really think this could work?" "I know it could. You have good stock, you have a reputation for breaking horses right, and you have land to support more. You just need better business sense." She looked at him with a mixture of hope and nervousness. "I could help with that, if you want. I am good with numbers and negotiation. My father used to let me help with his business correspondence before he decided it was not proper." "Your father was an idiot," Austin said. "And yes, I want your help. If you think you can improve things, I trust you. Really, really. This is your home now, too. If you see ways to make it better, I want to hear them." She beamed at him, and in that moment, Austin realized something that hit him with the force of a runaway horse. He loved her. Completely, irrevocably, without reservation. It was not just attraction or affection or gratitude. It was love, pure and simple and terrifying. He did not say it then. The words felt too big, too important to just blurt out over papers and ink. But he felt them, solid and true, and he knew that when the right moment came, he would tell her. That moment came 2 weeks later. They had ridden out to check on the cattle in the north pasture, something they had started doing together on Sunday afternoons. It was Delilah's favorite time of the week, she had told him, when they could just be together away from the work and worry of the ranch. They stopped at the top of a hill that overlooked the entire property, and Austin watched Delilah take in the view. The land rolled away in shades of gold and brown, dotted with cattle and bounded by mountains in the distance. The sky was the kind of blue that only California in autumn could produce. "I love it here," she said softly. "I never thought I could love anywhere this much." "I love you," Austin said, and the words came out easier than he thought they would. She turned to look at him, eyes wide. "What?" "I love you, Delilah. I think I have loved you since you stood up to your father in my yard and told him you were done being owned. Maybe before that. I do not know exactly when it happened, but I know it is true. You do not have to say anything back. I just needed you to know." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she was smiling. "I love you too. I was so scared to say it, so scared I was wrong, or it was too soon, or I was just confused. But I am not confused. I love you, Austin Hayes. I love your kindness and your strength and the way you see me as I really am. I love the life we are building together. I love everything about this." He dismounted from his horse and helped her down from hers, and then he kissed her there on the hilltop with the whole world spread out below them. It felt like a beginning and an ending all at once, the closing of her old life and the opening of something new and bright. "Marry me," he said when they pulled apart. "Not because anyone is forcing you, not because of money or obligation. Just because we love each other and want to build a life together." "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you." They stood there holding each other, two people who had been broken and lost finding wholeness in each other, and Austin felt a kind of peace he had never known before. The wedding took place in early November, a simple ceremony at the ranch with just Miguel, Tommy, and Mrs. Chen as witnesses. Delilah wore a simple green dress that matched her eyes, and Austin wore his best shirt and a string tie. There was no elaborate ceremony, no crowds, no pressure. Just two people promising to love and care for each other in front of people who cared about them. The local circuit judge, a friendly man named Roberts who had bought several horses from Austin over the years, performed the ceremony. When he pronounced them husband and wife, Austin kissed Delilah with a gentleness that spoke of all the promises they were making to each other. They celebrated with a meal that Delilah had prepared with Mrs. Chen's help, and Miguel brought out a guitar and played while Tommy sang in a surprisingly good voice. It was nothing like the wedding Delilah had been supposed to have, the one that would have been full of strangers and false smiles and pain. This was real. This was right. This was theirs. That night, as husband and wife, they finally shared a room. Austin was careful and patient, and Delilah was nervous but willing, and together they found a rhythm that was theirs alone. Afterward, She lay in his arms and felt truly safe for the first time in her life. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For helping me put the pieces back together. I was so broken when I walked into that saloon. I did not think I would ever feel whole again." Austin kissed her forehead. "You did the hard work. I just gave you space to do it." "We helped each other," she said. "You were broken too in your own way, lost and lonely even if you did not show it. And now we are not alone. Now we have each other." They fell asleep tangled together, and in the morning they woke to their first day as a married couple. Life on the ranch continued, but everything felt different now, better and more complete. Delilah's business sense proved invaluable. She reached out to buyers in San Francisco, and even as far as Sacramento, writing letters in her careful script and highlighting the quality of Austin's breeding program. Within 6 months, they had doubled their income from the horses, and Austin was able to hire another hand and expand the operation. The ranch prospered. So did their marriage. There were challenges, of course. A hard winter in 1879 that killed several head of cattle. A barn fire that they managed to contain before it spread. Tommy got married and moved to his own place, and they hired a young man named Jack to replace him. Miguel got sick one winter, and Delilah nursed him back to health with soups and teas and fierce determination. Through it all, Austin and Delilah stood together. They fought sometimes, the way all married couples do, usually about money or work or whose turn it was to clean the chicken coop. But they always talked it through, always found their way back to each other. In the spring of 1880, Delilah realized she was pregnant. She told Austin one evening after dinner, nervous despite knowing he would be happy. They had talked about children but never really planned for them, both too focused on the ranch and their new life together. "I think I am going to have a baby," she said, her hand on her stomach. Austin stared at her for a moment, then broke into the biggest smile she had ever seen. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing, and she laughed with him, dizzy and delighted. "We are going to have a baby," he said, setting her down gently. "We are going to be parents. Are you happy? Are you kidding? I am thrilled, scared out of my mind, but thrilled." They prepared for the baby together. Austin built a cradle from oak wood, sanding and staining it until it gleamed. Delilah sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her hands working with love and care. Mrs. Chen threw her a small party with the other ranch wives from the area, and Delilah realized with wonder that she had friends now, people who cared about her. The baby came in early December, a cold night when the stars were bright as broken glass. The doctor came from town, and Mrs. Chen stayed to help, and Austin paced the porch until Miguel told him he was going to wear a hole in the boards. When the baby's cry finally rang out, Austin ran inside to find Delilah exhausted but smiling, holding a small bundle wrapped in one of her handmade blankets. "It is a boy," she said softly. "A healthy boy." Austin sat carefully on the edge of the bed and looked at his son, at the tiny, perfect face and miniature hands. "He is beautiful. You are amazing. I love you so much. I love you too." Delilah handed him the baby, and Austin held his son with careful wonder. "I want to name him Samuel, after my mother's father. He was kind to me when I was little before he died." "Samuel Hayes," Austin said, testing the name. "I like it." Samuel grew into a happy, healthy baby who loved to be outside and smiled at everyone. As he got bigger, he followed Austin around the ranch like a devoted shadow, and Delilah would watch them together and feel her heart overflow with contentment. In 1882, they had a daughter they named Rose, after Austin's mother. She had Delilah's green eyes and her father's stubborn chin, and she ruled the household with an iron fist despite being barely 2 feet tall. Samuel adored his little sister, and Austin joked that they would have to beat the suitors away with a stick when she got older. The ranch continued to grow. With Delilah's business guidance and Austin's skill with horses, they became known throughout Southern California. Buyers came from as far as Arizona to purchase their stock, and they had to hire 3 more hands to keep up with the work. They built an addition onto the house, adding more bedrooms and a larger kitchen. Delilah planted roses by the porch, and they bloomed in a riot of red and pink and yellow every spring. The vegetable garden expanded until they were selling produce in San Diego twice a week. Life was good. Life was full. One evening in the fall of 1885, when Samuel was 5 and Rose was 3, and Delilah was pregnant with their 3rd child, they sat on the porch watching the sunset like they had done hundreds of times before. The children were asleep inside, and the ranch was quiet except for the usual evening sounds of animals settling for the night. "Do you ever think about that day in the saloon?" Delilah asked. "When we met?" "Sometimes," Austin said. "I think about how close you came to disappearing. What would have happened if you had not walked in there, if I had not been there at that exact moment? I think about it too. I was so close to just vanishing. I stood outside that saloon for 10 minutes trying to decide if I should go in or just walk into the desert and keep walking. If you had finished your errands 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes later, we never would have met. But we did meet. We did." She took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "You saved me, Austin, not just by giving me a job or a place to stay. You saved me by showing me that I was worth saving, that I could be more than what my father tried to make me. You saved me too. This ranch was just a place to work before you came. Now it is a home. Now it is everything." He brought her hand to his lips and kissed it. "I was going through the motions of living. You reminded me how to actually live. We saved each other then. We did." They sat in comfortable silence, and Austin thought about all the things that had happened since that day in July of 1878 when a broken bride had walked into a saloon and changed his life forever. The challenges they had faced and overcome, the love they had built, the family they were creating. "I am glad you were broken," he said softly. "Not because I wanted you to hurt, but because it brought you to me. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best things. I am glad you were lonely. I am glad you were kind. I am glad you saw me and decided I was worth helping." Delilah leaned her head on his shoulder. "I am glad for all of it, even the hard parts, because they led me here. They led me to you. To us," Austin corrected. "To us." Their 3rd child, another boy they named Matthew, was born in early 1886. He was quiet and thoughtful from the start, more interested in books than horses, and Delilah loved him fiercely for being so much like she had been as a child. The years continued to pass, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the growing children. Samuel learned to break horses under his father's careful tutelage. Rose proved to have her mother's head for business and started helping with the books when she was barely 8. Matthew read everything he could get his hands on and talked about being a doctor someday. Austin and Delilah grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year. They had their hard times. There was a drought one year that nearly broke them financially. Matthew got sick with scarlet fever when he was 6, and they spent terrifying weeks nursing him back to health. Rose fell from a horse and broke her arm. Samuel, at 15, decided he was in love with a girl from town, and his broken heart when she chose someone else was hard to watch. But they weathered it all together, Austin and Delilah, partners in everything. They still sat on the porch most evenings, still talked late into the night, still reached for each other in the darkness. The passion had evolved into something deeper and more enduring, a love built on years of shared experience and unwavering support. In 1895, When Delilah was 37 and Austin was 49, they celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary. The children threw them a party, and the ranch was full of friends and neighbors who had become family over the years. Miguel, now elderly but still spry, played his guitar while people danced in the yard. Mrs. Chen brought enough food to feed an army. Austin stood with his arm around his wife, watching Samuel dance with a nice girl from San Diego, watching Rose boss around the younger children, watching Matthew talk books with the schoolteacher, and felt a profound sense of gratitude for everything his life had become. "What are you thinking?" Delilah asked. "I am thinking about how lucky I am, how different everything could have been." "Are you happy?" He looked at her, at the gray starting to show in her hair, at the laugh lines around her eyes, at the capable hands that had built this life alongside him. "I am more than happy. I am complete." She kissed him there in front of everyone, and he kissed her back, and their children groaned good-naturedly about their parents being embarrassing. That night, after everyone had gone and the children were asleep and the ranch was quiet, Austin and Delilah lay in bed together like they had done thousands of nights before. "Tell me something I do not know about you," Delilah said. It was a game they played sometimes, after all these years still finding new things to learn about each other. Austin thought about it. "Sometimes I still have nightmares about the day you might have left, that you might have taken my offer of a stage ticket to somewhere else instead of staying. I wake up and have to make sure you are still here. I am always here. I am always going to be here." She took his hand. "Tell me something else. Every time I see you with the children or working in the garden or just sitting on the porch reading, I fall in love with you all over again. It is not just one big love that stays the same. It is thousands of small loves every day, adding up to something bigger than I have words for." Delilah's eyes filled with tears. "That is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever said to me. It is true, all of it." "I have something I do not think I have ever told you," she said. "Every morning when I wake up in this house, in this life, I spend a moment being grateful that Richard left me at that altar. I know that sounds strange, but if he had not, I would never have found you. I would never have found myself. I would have lived and died without knowing what real love felt like. Do not thank him. You would have found your way eventually. You are too strong to have stayed broken forever. Maybe, but I am glad I did not have to find out. I am glad I found you when I did, how I did. Even though it hurt, even though I thought I was dying inside, I would not change it, because it brought me here." They fell asleep holding each other. Two people who had been broken and lost, finding everything they needed in each other. And in the morning, they woke to another day of the life they had built together. The years continued to pass in the way years do, sometimes fast and sometimes slow, marked by births and deaths and the endless cycle of ranch work. Samuel married his childhood friend Alina when he was 22, and they built a house on the southern edge of the ranch property. Rose decided she wanted to go to college, a radical idea for a woman in the 1890s, and Austin and Delilah supported her completely, sending her to a teacher's college in San Francisco. Matthew became a doctor just like he had always wanted, opening a practice in San Diego and making house calls throughout the county. Austin and Delilah became grandparents, first to Samuel's son Jacob, then to his daughter Lily. Rose eventually married a professor she met in San Francisco and had twin boys. Matthew married a nurse, and they had 3 daughters in quick succession. The ranch continued to thrive, though Austin started to slow down as he entered his 60s. Samuel took over more and more of the daily operations, proving to be as capable as his father. Delilah still kept the books and managed the business side, though Rose often came home to help. One evening in the fall of 1908, when Delilah was 50 and Austin was 62. They sat on the porch that had been rebuilt twice over the years, but still occupied the same spot. Their hair was mostly gray now, their hands marked by decades of work, but they still reached for each other the way they always had. 30 years, Delilah said softly. 30 years since you offered me a job and changed my life. Best decision I ever made, Austin said. I was so scared that day. I did not know if I could trust you, if I could trust anyone. My whole world had fallen apart. And look at you now. Look at what you built. This ranch, this family, this life. You did that, Delilah. You took your broken pieces and made something beautiful. We did it together. She leaned against him and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. I could not have done any of it without you. We were good for each other. We are good for each other. Still are. They sat and watched the sun set over the land they had worked and loved for 3 decades, and Austin thought about all the moments that had led them here. The good ones and the bad ones, the easy days and the hard ones, the laughter and the tears. All of it had woven together to create something lasting and true. You have any regrets? He asked. Delilah was quiet for a long moment, thinking. I regret that my mother never got to meet you or see her grandchildren. I regret that my father died angry and alone, even though he deserved it. I regret some of the times I was too harsh with the children or too focused on work. She paused. But I do not regret anything about us. Not one moment. Neither do I. Even the hard parts were worth it because they were with you. As full darkness fell and the stars began to appear, they went inside together to the house that had sheltered their love for 3 decades. The next morning would bring more work, more challenges, more of the endless tasks that came with ranch life. But it would also bring more moments together, more laughter, more quiet conversations and stolen kisses. They had built something that would last beyond them. Not just the ranch, though that would pass to Samuel and his children. Not just the businesses and properties and wealth they had accumulated, but the love they had created, the family they had raised, the example they had set of what a real partnership looked like. Years later, when Austin passed away quietly in his sleep at the age of 78, Delilah grieved but did not break. She had learned too much about strength over the years, had become too solid in herself to shatter even at the loss of her greatest love. She lived another 12 years, watching her grandchildren grow and her great-grandchildren be born, still managing the ranch business with Rose's help, still sitting on the porch in the evenings, though now she sat alone. But she was never really alone. Austin was in every board of the house they had expanded together, every fence post he had set, every horse in the pasture descended from his breeding stock. He was in their children's faces and their grandchildren's laughter. He was in the roses by the porch and the garden that still produced vegetables every summer. And when Delilah finally passed away in her sleep in 1932 at the age of 74, surrounded by children and grandchildren who loved her fiercely, her last thoughts were of a summer day in 1878 when she had walked into a saloon in tatters and tears, and a kind cowboy with whiskey-colored eyes had said, "Let me help you." She had let him help, and in helping her, he had helped himself. They had saved each other, those 2 broken people, and built something extraordinary from the pieces. The ranch still stands, passed down through generations of Hayes family members who all know the story of how it started. About the bride who was broken and the cowboy who helped her put the pieces back together. About how sometimes the worst moments in our lives are doorways to the best ones. About how love, real love, is built on kindness and respect and choosing each other every single day. Their graves sit on a hill overlooking the ranch, side by side the way they lived, with a single headstone that Samuel carved himself. It reads simply, Austin and Delilah Hayes. They helped each other heal. They built something that lasted. They loved well. And on summer evenings, when the sun sets over the California hills in shades of gold and orange, if you stand in just the right spot, you can almost see two figures sitting on the porch of the old house, holding hands and watching the stars come out together, exactly where they belong.